Oh, hello, I didn't see you there. So Sony's I'm Captain Peach, welcome back to the pit, and today I'm sitting on the other side of the couch because sometimes you just need to stop and smell the fake plants. In early 2022, Sony announced a massive shift away from their current strategy of incredible and well-selling single-player experiences to the never-ending money supply that is live service games, at least in Sony's eyes. Now, live service games are especially appealing because their focus isn't on initial sales like a single-player game, but on consistent if not growing revenue over a long period of time, as the game is regularly updated and improved upon. Meaning for a company's bottom line, they can expect more consistent cash flow over the years versus just the occasional bump from a release. And as evidenced by the juggernaut moneymakers of Fortnite and Call of Duty, if you can make a wildly popular live service game, people will throw insane amounts of money at you for years. At Sony's earnings call when this new live service strategy was announced, the chief financial officer stated, from calendar year 2014 to calendar year 2021, the size of the global game content market doubled, driven by add-on content revenue from live game services, which grew at an average annual rate of 15% during this period. We expect this trend to continue going forward. Basically, the model is growing and they wanted it. He continued saying, we intend to accelerate the growth of our first-party game software revenue, aiming to more than double the amount by fiscal year 2025. Dream big, as they say. This shift was especially highlighted by the acquisition of Bungie by Sony for a whopping $3.6 billion. Bungie, well known for the creation of the Halo and Destiny franchises, has spent years updating their huge live service hit Destiny 2. PlayStation added Bungie to the family. Not only for their talent and IPs, but for their expertise in live service. And they definitely put them to work, as Sony announced that their goal was to have 12 live service games up and running by the end of March 2026. To achieve this lofty goal, they also acquired several other developers, such as Haven and Firewalk Studios.
When did this turn into Beautiful World?
Now, a core reason for this huge gamble was supposedly a mandate by the PlayStation CEO of the time, Jim Ryan, that Sony's teams should make more live service games. So a number of their first-party studios all got to work to fulfill this mandate. And slowly over time, it all came crashing down. Trouble began brewing in late 2023 when Sony announced that they were cutting the live service games they were going to launch by 2026 from 12 games down to 6, with the remaining still being worked on and would be launched later. They said they wanted to focus on quality over quantity. At about the same time, the CEO Jim Ryan announced his retirement. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. So what were those 12 games and what has happened to them since these announcements? Now, the official list of their planned live service titles was never released, but based on everything I've been able to piece together, I've come up with what I believe are the 12 games they initially had in mind to have up and running by 2026. And as a whole, things don't look super great. First off for their live service collection is MLB The Show. They make a new one every year, and while there's not a lot of pomp and widespread excitement on the internet for this franchise, it's definitely got a dedicated fan base, as according to a former PlayStation marketing director, it makes over $100 million a year. Not quite the same success as other sports franchises like Madden or FIFA, but pretty darn solid and definitely some of that live service money Sony was hoping for. With MLB as a base, they were looking to add to their lineup with new multiplayer titles from some of their premier studios. But unfortunately, 2 high-profile and far into development live service games were canceled at the end of 2023. The first was a multiplayer Spider-Man game called The Great Web, which was discovered in a big leak resulting from a hack of its studio, Insomniac Games. It's not known for sure why it was shelved, as the leaked trailer showed a game that looked pretty far along in its development. However, there's some speculation that the cancellation was due in part to the negative reception of other very expensive superhero live service games, like Marvel's Avengers and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Either way, this game never fully saw the light of day. The other cancellation at this time was an online experience of The Last of Us that the developer Naughty Dog had been working on for a long time. Originally going to be a multiplayer component of The Last of Us Part 2, it got turned into a full-fledged standalone game. A former Sony executive said that the idea for The Last of Us Online came from Naughty Dog and they really wanted to make it. But Bungie explained to them what it takes to make live service games, and Naughty Dog realized, oops, we can't do that. If we do it, we can't make Intergalactic the heretic prophet. So that was a lack of foresight, which, based on the revealed trailer and the response to Intergalactic, might have been the wrong decision.
You've been out of the game for a long time. Or maybe I need to remind you the kind of people we'd be crossing here.
But that was another live service game in Sony's Big 12 lineup that was now just canned. They needed to release something to stay on track. This brings us to the next and brand new live service game that was a surprise smash hit that blew everyone away, including PlayStation, Foamstars. I'm just kidding, no. No, not even close. Foamstars tried to compete in the same genre as Nintendo's popular shooter Splatoon, but just didn't catch on. And despite launching as a free game on PlayStation Plus, it lost 95% of its users within the first 2 months. And while there was a small group of dedicated players keeping the game profitable enough for updates and regular seasons, that number slowly dropped off over time. And as of last month, Foamstars has concluded its final season. The live service has officially ended less than a year after release. Not exactly a moneymaker. The situation kept getting worse as Sony officially canceled another live service game that was in development by London studios. There's not a ton known about this game other than a single piece of artwork that was released and the description that it was set in an alternate version of the UK's capital where dunk-wearing demons would face off against dragons and the like. I don't even know what that means. Additionally, at the same time, there's also a report that a rumored live service Twisted Metal game was also just canceled.
And that concludes our tour.
Although the report states that the game wasn't ever officially greenlit. So I'm not including that in the 12 games Sony mentioned. Either way, more cancellations and trouble behind the scenes. Sony really needed something to work. But contrary to Foamstars, the next game that released was an actual surprise smash hit. Helldivers 2, created by Arrowhead Studios, took the entire internet by storm and became the fastest selling PlayStation game in history, reaching 12 million sales in the first 3 months alone. It beat out freaking God of War. And even though it's had a handful of controversies and the player count has dropped a decent amount since release, it's been regularly updated and has maintained a healthy player base overall, no doubt making tons of revenue in the process. Finally, things were starting to look up for this live service strategy, and Sony was ready and excited to keep the momentum going and drop their next mega hit that would be the new live service game to beat all others and be positioned as the flagship franchise for Sony. Reportedly, internally, it was referred to as the future of PlayStation with Star Wars-like potential. It was the CEO of Sony Interactive's baby, and he was a massive champion for the game. The future of PlayStation was Concord by Firewalk Studios.
Me and my crew.
I don't need to go into too much detail about Concord since there are thousands of videos on its failings, including one I made looking at how its reveal trailer doomed it right from the start. So I'll just say it reportedly cost $400 million to create this online-only multiplayer shooter. Gosh, what are these outfits? And it made a whopping $1 million off of 25,000 copies sold, all of which were offered refunds. It was shut down and discontinued within 2 weeks of launch, and resulted in Firewalk Studios getting permanently closed, after Sony spent an unknown amount acquiring them and they only ever made the one game. Concord has gone down as one of the biggest losses in gaming history. And at such a massive loss of hundreds of millions of dollars, it undoubtedly put the rest of Sony's slate of live service games at jeopardy. And it would cause PlayStation to seriously reconsider if this was the way to go.
Stop acting like you know the way ahead, like you know the rules. There are no rules, man. We're lost.
Add on to that the rocky development of the previous canceled multiplayer games I mentioned earlier, it seems like Sony has started to cut some of their losses. As of last month, they announced the cancellation of 2 unannounced live service games, one being a God of War game and an unnamed one by the studio that made Days Gone. Could have just put that money towards a sequel, but whatever. More cancellations. So what's left? Out of the 12 games that were planned for this huge live service initiative, 5 were outright canceled, 4 actually released with only 2 of them being successful and 1 of them causing a massive financial loss, and we still have 3 to go that are unreleased. Marathon is being made by Bungie, which has a proven track record and everything seems good so far. And while it doesn't have an official release date yet, the speculation is that it's targeting an early 2026 launch. So at least something is still going according to plan. But another one of the 12 first announced when Sony declared this big push and bought the studio that was developing it, even though, like Concord, this was the studio's first title ever produced, has reportedly been delayed. Fair Games is a heist-centered multiplayer game very similar to the Payday franchise. But because it's been several years since it was first announced, with not a single peep from the studio or Sony about it, I suspect it's having some development struggles. Because by now, they really should have released something that would keep it in the public eye and fresh in the consumer's mind. We'll have to wait and see what happens to that though. And finally, we have a rumored multiplayer game in the Horizon series, which, given the incredible popularity of that franchise and the fact that the developer, Guerrilla Games, always delivers great experiences, it will most likely be a huge hit. And that is the full collection of the 12 live service games Sony had hoped to ship by next year. Overall, Sony's massive push and gamble into live service games hasn't panned out. With lots of cancellations, several failures, and so far only a couple of actual successes, the track record is not looking good. And while there's still a few games still in development that could prove to be big wins, this pivot and strategy to go all in on live service didn't work out for PlayStation at all. If you're gonna swing for the fences, you better knock it out of the park. And Sony barely made it to first base. That's an MLB reference for you.
Nobody asked.
Going full steam ahead into a field that you haven't had much proven success in almost always leads to disaster. Any Canadians in the chat remember when Target lost $5.4 billion and closed every single one of their stores after only 2 years of being in the country? Putting all of your eggs in one basket is a huge gamble and carries a lot of danger. If you succeed, you're rolling in it. If you don't, you lose everything. What PlayStation should have done was focus on a select few titles, a combination of proven franchises such as the Horizon multiplayer game or Helldivers, which the first game was a moderate success, so they believed that the sequel would be as well, and you throw in a couple of smaller new experimental games where if you take a loss, it's not going to cripple the company. You then properly plan out and make sure all of these studios have the capabilities to handle live service, give them support if they need it, work hard to make sure those games are the best they could possibly be, and learn from any mistakes and challenges along the way. That probably would have saved them from closing studios, canceling numerous projects that were far into development, and not suffer huge losses over games that people just simply don't want to play. But hey, that's marketing. Smack the like and subscribe buttons, and if you want to learn the psychological tricks publishers will use to get you to pre-order games and even keep them if the game is broken or trash, or if you want to see the colossal marketing lie of Halo 5, click on one of the videos on screen. And until next time, stay peachy.